Alright guys, so even after you've done your artwork and did the background removal with the laser and stuff, it's not a turnkey deal. There's still some work to be done. It is a heck of a time saver, but you know, everything that's a blessing is also a curse. So if we take a look at it, this is what it ends up looking like when it comes off the laser. And you can see the background's in pretty good, but there's a little bit of a burn edge there. And you don't get this with natural hand engraving, because those lines, what will become the engraved lines on the top, even though they were hit very lightly with the laser, there's no bevel. There wouldn't be a bevel like you would get with an actual graver. And if we look at this through the microscope, you can see some of the imperfections of the laser. And I don't mean that in a negative way, it just is what it is. You can see it does a pretty nice texture in the background. Give me a sec, I'll get us in focus here. Does a pretty nice texture in the background, but there's just just kind of a burnt edge, for lack of a better way to say it. And I'll usually take like 400 grit sandpaper, and you can move across there, but when I just hit it a little bit, you can see that there's a little bit of a displacement of metal. In other words, you can see that shiny spot right around the edges, and that's where that's actually raised up a little bit. And it doesn't take long to get it off, but in fairness, you should know that it's going to be there. I know a lot of people are getting really interested in getting a laser to save themselves some time with the background. So just about that quickly, I've got everything back down to a manageable surface finish, which is 400 grit sandpaper on a urethane block. And then this is a Stumac fret eraser, so I usually will go over it. This is a 400. The 400 grit fret eraser seems to be a little bit finer. It's a little bit nicer finish than what regular sandpaper will get you. So there's the 400 grit fret eraser, and then we'll go to like an 800 grit, which is quickly going to take us to a little bit nicer finish. And usually I'll take that same urethane block and I'll go over it with some of this purple polishing paper, they call it. It comes from Rio Grande, and I'll back off of that in just a minute where you can kind of see all this a little bit better. But really doesn't take very long to get that up to the point where you're ready to cut. Now, you can see that my lines that I lasered really light are exactly that. They're really light. So that's actually going to be the path where we engrave. And I don't want those to be real strong and bold. But one of the disadvantages that comes with it is around these edges and everything, where if you just engrave that, whenever you cut this line, there's going to be a natural bevel right there. And you don't get that with a laser. It's pretty much straight up and down. So you end up coming back and cutting a bevel in it after the fact. Now I normally do it with power, but I don't have power on right now. But you can see what I mean. You're going to want to go back in and place that bevel there, and to do that, you're pretty much very similar to sculpting an overlay. Is you're going to actually put the tool in the background up against the scroll and let the angle of the tool be what basically skives off that outer edge. Now I do recommend doing it under power, but you can kind of see the difference in the beveled edge and the square edge. So while it does save a heck of a lot of time removing background, it comes with a little speeding ticket. And if we look at that from a little bit further out, to put things into perspective, and is there any value to doing it this way, is so this area of background behind the scroll work, by hand it would probably take me 15 minutes, maybe 30 minutes. Some people it would take them an hour to get that background out and then go back and stipple it. Now we don't have to do any of that. It's already done, and it was done on the laser. So once you get the information in the laser, it removed that background in less than 5 minutes. Moving to a little bit bigger piece This piece here, it hasn't been sanded or anything yet, and it took it, you know, 4 or 5 minutes to remove that background. Again, that would have taken me, you know, even if I could do it in 30 minutes, 30 minutes became 5 minutes. When you move out to yet an even bigger piece of scroll work, it did all of that background in 8 or 9 minutes, and by hand that would have easily been a couple of hours. Or even if I was having a real good day and I got it done in an hour. And again, none of that's been sanded yet. Backing up a little bit more, and let's look at the other side, because I've got a lot of the work done already on the other side. On the finished, the way it looks when it's finished. So while I throw stuff around, the way it looks when it's finished is this has been hand shaded, obviously, and I cut that ever so slight bevel on all of the edges. So again, you have artwork done, lightly lasered for my pattern, and then the background was removed. Moving to a section that's covered up with tape. This little area right here, same animal. Background was removed, went around the pattern and beveled my edges, and then did the shading. And you know, collectively, it's using a laser like a drill press. Meaning it's just another tool. It doesn't generate any particular artwork. I had to draw this on the computer, had to draw this, had to draw this. It doesn't cut anything unless you feed it information. And you can tell that that right there is nowhere near finished, and you couldn't sell that to a customer. It needs to be finished out. And the finish work is done by hand, and that's what it will look like when it's done. Now let's look at that under a scope right quick in the interest of being thorough. And let me get you where you can see it. So this is what you were just looking at, but it's under a scope, and it looks just like hand engraving, and I'll tell you why, because it's freaking hand engraving. What's not by hand is the background, and under super close inspection you can tell. One of the characteristics of it is that it ends up with a little bit of a high spot. Let me clamp that in place so I can do a better job of showing you. Clamp over there. Bear with me. Okay. So it doesn't show up really big on the camera, but like you take this area here. Now certainly it's not noticeable to the naked eye, and it's plenty low to hold ink and all of that stuff. But the edges, this cavity right here that we remove background on, the highest part of it's in the center. It's almost puffy like a pillow maybe. And it might be a little bit more noticeable here, but it's still a very clean background. And my hands-on engraving time for this whole section right here probably drops from a couple of hours to maybe 30 minutes. So collectively over an entire slide where it weren't segmented like this, I think there's a valid place for it in this world. I'm not a super huge fan of laser engraving in its entirety, but I do think the lasers are going to work out to be a very useful tool to do some of the grunt work for us and let us focus on, you know, the parts that take us so long to learn. So anyway,